Oh. Hey, gang. Um, I think the Firestorm format was unfixable. And what's weirder is that I don't think that's a problem. So I knew going into the last event that I was going to be making a final video about the Firestorm format. Some of my thoughts, summaries, meta takes about what we saw. At about 4 different points in time, I was almost certain I knew what this video was going to be, but I wanted to wait until I played the last event. And I'm glad I did, because this is not any of those scripts I wrote. So like I said in the start, the thesis that I've landed on is that the Firestorm format was unfixable. There was nothing that was going to happen that was going to fix the fact that it was a kind of stale, repetitive format that people tired of quickly. Because when the format first came around, everyone said the problem was Like a Void. And then Like a Void was gone. And then the next problem was Bear Bomb. And as I was going through the last tournament and an opponent saw all 3 Ursicle and Bear Bombed me anyway. An opponent dropped Helios Chariot Ride, and despite having potential points of interaction, I just had to sit there and get my board popped and then spend, 3 turns just asking Zeus to put the answer in my hand, and it didn't happen. That wasn't any better than Like a Void. That was all the same stuff. This was an unfixable format. This was going to happen. But it had to happen for the good of the game. Dan recently appeared, Mr. Elestrals, the A-Drive himself, on the Elestronauts channel to talk a bit about card design and reflect a bit on some of Firestorm and where the game was going. A wonderful video. You should go take a look at it if you haven't already. Much love to the Elestronauts. And one thing he talked about was how the game was intentionally speeding up a notch as we headed into Divine Champions and kind of reaches its conclusion in Livestream. I think this is a good move for the game. I think the game could stand to be just a little bit faster so that there is a bigger reason to do big payoffs instead of sit on small guys and bleed an opponent out slowly. I think it is healthy for the game to bring a little more action to it. And Dan talked about how the goal is not to continue to crank that dial up in the future right now, but is to get here and stay here. Now this puts us in an interesting position because Elestral sets only have like 90-ish new cards, and there's 8 elements and different game plans within each element, and now different divines within each element. 90 cards is not enough cards to drop a new set and bring the whole game up to a new level all at once. It's just not enough cards to do that. So what does that mean for this plan to move the game up a notch? Well, it means one of 2 things. They could do it really slowly over multiple sets by doing a couple like quarter notch increases, but then you're going to print a bunch of cards that are not going to do much and you're going to waste a year getting there, right? Like it would be a slow process and not a lot's going to look like it's changed. Or you can kind of just like do 2 half steps, which is kind of what Elestrals did here, where you get Firestorm, which is like the first turn of the notch, and then Livestream, which finishes setting the new level. And what does that mean? That means that the things that got featured in Firestorm are going to be a cut above basically everything except the previously most powerful cards in the game. Firestorm was kind of doomed to be a stale format. The things in Firestorm were destined to just be stronger and lead to a format with less variety. And I think this is obvious if we look at the events in Firestorm. So if we look at the events in Firestorm, the very first event here was Blizz Blizz almost unaltered, minus the fact that it's playing the new Bremelinks. So this is a strategy you could have ran out in Moonrise almost card for card. But if we look at the rest of the format, we have a Like a Void top, we have a Bow Brew with Hestia, Fire Spam, essentially .deck, which is enabled with Hestia in Firestorm. We have Frost Good Stuff Nixamera, another Firestorm strategy. We have Bear Bomb, and then we have Chronodial, enabled by a Livestream card. Crazy, crazy. But notably on Poseidon's Fury as well, another Firestorm card. So, at a minimum, 4 of the 6 were on Firestorm strategies or enablers, essentially. Well, let's compare that to Moonrise events. These are Daybreak decks. These are Daybreak decks. Let's go a little further back. Yeah, this is a Daybreak deck. Good job. Yeah, more Daybreak decks for sure. And oh, look at this, a couple tops with Moonrise Lunar aggro. Despite Lunar's Moonlight Moment, a lot of these decks are things you could have just ran out in Daybreak. The Moonrise meta did not force you into the new world so much. And to double click on that point even further, even though Blizz won this first event, if we go look at it, so many of the strategies in this event are new strategies. In the top here, we have Fire Artifacts, we have new Like a Void, we have Pharaohgeist featuring new Like a Void. And you might think that it's all new Like a Void, but it's really not. There were obviously a lot of Like a Voids. There were 38 Like a Void decks in this event. If we go pull up Like a Void, you will see this was the most represented deck in this event. There were a lot of people on Like a Void Champion of Artemis. A whole bunch of them. Like I said, 38. However, there were 13 Fire Artifact players, plenty on this type of deck. There were 15 players doing some kind of Cry Source strategy that didn't include Like a Void, so I, dropped a few of these out of that number. But plenty of these kind of win beater strategies. There was plenty of bear representation in the first event. There were 11 people playing early versions of Bear Bomb. There were also 18 people on some version of Bearless Hestia. A lot of these were spider decks, but there were a few fire good stuff piles like we saw from the Bow Brew later in the Firestorm meta. So there were 124 players in this event total. Over half of the players in this event, just based on these rough numbers I ran up off of obvious Firestorm cards, were on a Firestorm strategy. This is kind of the first time that a set has dropped, as far as I can tell, where immediately the majority of players are on strategies from the set. And that's exactly because of the speed increase, I believe. Now, I say the format was unfixable, and obviously Elestrals tried to fix it. After Outcry, Like a Void Champion of Artemis got hit and it got rid of it. So we spent half of the meta not playing with it. Well, what did that do? What kind of world did hitting Like a Void create? It created a world where just a different Firestorm deck filled that gap. There were less players in the last event, but 20 of them were on some form of Bear Bomb out of 94 players. In Like a Void's most represented event, it was 25% of decks. In this event, Majursa was 22% of decks. So almost the same usage rate as Like a Void at its peak. In fact, I would argue that there is an alternate Elestrals universe where people latched on to Bear Bomb immediately, and we saw a Bear Bomb hit instead of a Like a Void hit, and you had the opposite representation where people went, oh, well, Bear Bomb got hit, so we'll just transition to Like a Void now. Right? Like that, I think we were so close to a world of that happening, frankly. And the thing about both of those decks is, if you look at all of the cards before Firestorm, there's just so few options to handle them. But if you look at those decks going into Livestream, you would go, like a Void, sure, put 2 small guys on your board, I will murder it with Cyprong. Or, you know, insert other Livestream card here, right? You look at Majursa and you go, that's funny. Lockagon special, Lockagon, heal pop Majursa, no problem. I don't care that you cleared my back row. So we're heading into Livestream where all of the cards are going to be Firestorm levels of power, and the Firestorm decks aren't going anywhere. Majursa Bomb is still going to be around in Livestream. Despite not getting more support, I said what I said, it's still going to be just as powerful and good in my opinion. Strategies like Fire Artifacts aren't going anywhere. In fact, they get new angles and lines they can play in Livestream. And we have all new lines and angles in Livestream. With Aetheros, with Lockagon, with Theraheart, with all these new strategies that are coming to life. So what am I saying? I'm saying that Firestorm gave us a few really strong strategies enabled in this new, faster version of Elestrals was trying to move towards. Livestream continues that trend. In a format where there's only 3 decks, you know, give or take, that are basically at the power level now of the new power curve, of course everyone's going to be playing those decks. They're the best options. Of course that's going to get boring. You're like, oh, okay, oh, Bears again. Let's go Bears. But in Livestream, it looks like we're going to have 6, 7, maybe more decks at this power level now that they've had 2 sets to roll out key pieces. And that, I think, is going to create a really interesting meta. And now, I'm not going to say Firestorm is a perfectly designed set. There are things we can look at that maybe are a bit problematic. You know, like a Void is really splashable. Whether or not that's a huge issue, I think, is actually a different debate. I think there is a world you debate that having a splashable like a Void as the start of the dial turn up is actually a good thing, because you can take like a Void and put it in a bunch of decks to have them be at the new power level. And then we lost that, so then everyone ended up on Bears. Anyway, that's a whole different topic. But the point remains, I don't think Firestorm was a poorly designed set. I think it was the first set of a new design philosophy, and as such became essentially the only game in the town, making the meta go stale quickly when we just left Moonrise, which was a super diverse meta where you had all sorts of decks from the history of Elestral showing up. Livestream, I think, is going to take us back to the wonderful variety we've been used to in the past in Elestrals and enable a lot of new strategies. And even more importantly, if they consistently keep this up, I'm really excited for what the game looks like at the end of Divine Champions. I'm really excited to see the world where it's like, oh, there's a dozen decks you can play that are all really cool, viable strategies. I think that's going to be really awesome when we get to the end of Divine Champions. So that's that, really. The Firestorm format was unfixable. It didn't matter what you hit, because the Firestorm cards were just above the power curve of what came before, and it was always going to be that way. We can appreciate this set as the starting point of the Elestrals philosophy shift in design that is leading us into Livestream, which I think is going to be one of the most fun and exciting formats we've seen from Elestrals yet. If Elestrals can keep this pace for Divine Champions, I think the future of this game and what tournaments are going to look like is tremendously exciting. And I'm very ready for it and excited to participate in it. Let me know what you thought about the Firestorm format in the comments below. YouTube thinks you'll like this video over here. And if you've watched all the way to the end and you haven't subscribed yet, why not? You like the content enough? Click it up there. I hope to see you in the next one. Happy clashing, my fellow casters.